Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Erie. My name is Reverend Kristina Church, and I gratefully and happily serve this wonderful group of people. And it is our tradition to call each other to the service with a bell, or many bells in this case. So if you have a bell, please unmute yourselves and let those bells ring. Wonderful. What a joyous sound. Many voices together of bells, of people is always a wonderful and joyful sound. And to make some more joyful sounds, we have our friend Howard Krack, who will be singing our traditional welcoming song with words and music by Hal Walker. Whoever you are, we welcome you today.
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you, Howard. And thank you all for being here today. Today, we're going to be talking about shared ministry. And so our opening words this morning are from a book called Interdependence, and it's the report of the Unitarian Universalist Association's Commission on Appraisal way back in 1997, but these words are classic and still hold true today. One key aspect of Unitarian Universalism is our belief that ministry of the congregation does not belong exclusively to the ordained clergy, but to everyone. And Neil Shadle, a Unitarian Universalist minister, said on this topic, ministry is the vocation of every person of faith, and Unitarian Universalism as a democratic faith affirms the priesthood of all believers. That means we are all lay ministers, whether or not we choose to become professional religious leaders. This belief in the priesthood of all believers is central to who we are as a religious movement. And now Jackson will play Sonata number 5 by Albeniz. And center us in beautiful music. Thank you, Jackson. And now Nancy Lorei will read the words of our chalice lighting this morning. And if you have a chalice at home, you're invited to light it as well as we come together this morning.
In a time of uncertainty, when everything around us is changing constantly, each day new developments, rising numbers, changing guidelines, when the world we live in suddenly seems upside down and topsy-turvy, we light our chalice to remind ourselves of our grounding in our faith. We remember that the flaming chalice came into being as a beacon of hope during World War II, a secret symbol that offered help in the midst of it all. We wrap ourselves in the warm light of a familiar flame, a reminder of the strength that emerges when we come together in community.
Thank you, Nancy. Now that our chalice is lit and we are together in community, our first work as a community this morning is to appreciate and remember someone who passed in the week before, someone whose legacy to this congregation is almost more than we can express in words. And of course, I'm talking about our friend, Doug Russell. I unfortunately did not get to know Doug as well as I wish I could have, but I've learned a little bit about him from all of you and from the words that you've shared about him. And I've learned what a generous and good and faithful and committed Unitarian Universalist and person Doug Russell really was. Our grief is deep this morning, and I've asked Lynn Stevens to share a little bit more about Doug as someone who knew him much better than I did. Lynn?
Good morning. The UUCE has sadly said an eternal goodbye to beloved members and friends recently. Donna Martin, Herta Danowski, Peggy Richardson, and as most of you know, Doug Russell. His transition was pure Doug, calm, gentle, and peaceful. He carried our congregation forward for years, managing our building and grounds, helping install and teaching us about our new technology, manning and maintaining the sound system, serving as a board member, and as a long-running president during some very challenging years. Though he loved sharing his amazing talent, humor, and patience. Doug seemed to be happily everywhere here, quietly doing what needed done and without prompt or praise, and delighted and enthralled us with his musical majesty. The epitome of grace under fire, he taught us how to walk through trials and challenges with a song in our heart and a smile on our face. Doug will always be present with us here. Reminders of his work, his gifts, and his life surround us. At one time or another, we've all wished that we had his patience and positivity and outlook. Now we all simply wish we had Doug. May he rest in eternal musical peace and joy until we all meet again. Namaste and amen.
Amen, and thank you, Lynn. As we continue and will continue to grieve this tremendous loss, we also remember that Doug will always be a part of us and a part of the UU congregation of Erie, and that we have actually dedicated a part of our congregation's physical building to the memory of Doug and all that he did during his time with this congregation. And so we'd like to show the video once again of the dedication of the Doug Russell Sound Room. And when we are back in our building, we will be able to see it in person. But for now, we just have to watch the video. We're not hearing the sound, Clyde. Can you, can you?
Share with you a new addition to our religious home, a plaque dedicating the sound room to honor our previous president, expert sound technician. Hello, this is Julie McGuire, the president of the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Erie. I'm making this announcement from our beautiful sanctuary, where we would love to be gathering for this, our water communion and in-gathering service. I am here to share with you a new addition to our religious home, a plaque dedicating the sound room to honor our previous president, expert sound technician, and all-around good guy, Doug Russell. When we return to our building, this room will be known as the Russell Room. We love you, Doug.
The Russell Room will continue to be a part of our congregation's every experience on Sunday mornings and at other times during the week. And we will continue to remember Doug and all that he brought, all that he shared, all the love that still exists in this congregation for Doug. And in this way, he will not be gone from us. It is also the tradition of this congregation to sing together the hymn, the favorite hymn, Spirit of Life. And as you know, singing together on Zoom is not a possible thing right now. So instead, Pat Lorei will give one of his beautiful saxophone renderings of this beautiful song. And the words will also appear on your screen. So you are certainly invited to either meditate on them or sing them while muted in any way that feels right for you and for all of us to remember Doug. I am so moved by how much Doug was loved and how much he gave to this congregation. And know that your tears and your feelings of sadness are a sacred tribute to him. We, every week, have two other traditions in this congregation. Well, many other traditions, but one of them is that we share the Universal Covenant, as it's known, or the Children's Bond of Union, as we sometimes call it. And the words of that will appear on your screen. There are hand gestures as well that I'm still getting comfortable with. So I invite you to share that as you're willing and able. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Thank you. We also recite the Bond of Union of this congregation, which was adopted in 1898. And today, Mike Balson will lead us in reciting this as the words appear on your screen.
We unite ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, believing that we may thereby prove helpful one to another and promote the cause of truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
Wonderful. And now, as we continue with our improvisational service in the spirit of shared ministry, Nancy has a story for us for the Time for All Ages.
Okay, Lacey Walker, nonstop talker. Lacey was quite the little talker. She liked to talk and talk and talk. Lacey, please stop talking and eat your breakfast, chided her mom. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Lacey, less talking and more listening, scolded her teacher. Lacey, please quit talking. I can't hear my movie, shouted her brother. Lacey, stop talking and brush your teeth, sighed her dad. Nothing could quiet little Lacey. She talked and talked and talked. But on one gloomy morning, all that talking caught up with her. Lacey Walker lost her voice. She tried to whisper. She tried to shout. She tried to sing, but nothing happened. Lacey moped through breakfast. However, it didn't take her nearly as long to eat, since she couldn't talk. Lacey even had time to finish her homework. I'm really on a roll this morning, she thought. Lacey moped on her way to school. However, Lacey realized her friend Nadine told great jokes and was really funny. Lacey moped all day at school. However, she finished all of her work and got a gold star for listening. I've never gotten a gold star before, she thought. That night, Lacey wasn't quite so mopey. She grabbed a snack and watched a monster movie with her brother. He was right, she thought. This movie is awesome. And when her dad came upstairs, Lacey was ready for bed. Her teeth were brushed, her pajamas were on, and she was lying quietly in her bed. They even had time to read 2 extra books. The next morning, Lacey woke up feeling great. Not only could she talk again, but she could whisper, she could shout, she could sing. This is the best day ever, Lacey declared. Lacey ran downstairs, talking the entire way. Oh my goodness, I have so much to say, Lacey said. Nadine is hilarious. Gold stars are the best. I like monster movies. But first, I'm going to eat my breakfast, she said with a smile. And as Lacey quietly ate her breakfast, her family talked and she listened. Lacey Walker still liked to talk and talk and talk. But now she liked to listen to once in a while too.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes. Shared ministry is all about listening to one another and learning from one another. So what an appropriate story to share with us. Thank you. Now is the time in our service when we invite you into a practice of generosity by sharing what you have with our congregation. We know that this organization only exists because of those who are generous and who share their time, their talents, and their love and their treasure with this wonderful congregation. The instructions for how to make a donation to the congregation will appear on your screen as Jackson plays a centering hymn for us. All blessings on each gift and each giver. Well, today's service, as we said, is all about shared ministry. And so I've invited the members of the newly gathered Committee on Shared Ministry to be a part of it and to share some of what we've been doing, some of the reason why we have this committee at all, and some of our plans for the near future. So Mike and Nancy and Lynn will be speaking to you along with me because the minister is not the only person who leads the congregation, and the minister is not the only person who takes responsibility for the congregation. I think it's fitting that we're here after the passing of Doug Russell to talk about this subject, because he was someone who really, really understood that, and who really, really understood that it takes all of us to make this place what we want it to be. It is like a dance. We are using the image of a dance, but it's not a solo dance by any one person. And it's not even a tango of adversarial relationship between a minister and a congregation in which they're locked in a contest. It's more like a folk dancing circle, I think, an open circle where everybody's invited and where everybody can share in the joy of making something together. And that's how I like to think of shared ministry. The Committee on Shared Ministry is looking at the overall health of the congregation and its ministries. And when we talk about ministry, we're talking about everything the congregation does to fulfill its mission. So ministry just means all of the things that we do together to inspire, connect, and act in the world. And so in the spirit of shared ministry, we have a kind of a sermon of many voices today. And Mike is going to talk to you a little bit about what a committee on ministry really means and what shared ministry really means. Take it away, Mike.
Good morning. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure to meet in person, I'm Dr. Mike Balson. In this time of COVID, political unrest, and racial injustice, I think we would all agree that words matter. I'd like to take a few minutes to speak with you about the concept of shared ministry as an introduction to a reformulated committee on shared ministry. The word ministry is derived from the Latin ministerium, meaning service. The Oxford English Dictionary defines ministry as, quote, the action of ministering, the rendering of service, the performance of any office or labor for another. Now only in religious use or colored by associations with this. The verb share is defined as, quote, to divide and apportion in shares between two or more recipients. And perhaps more relevantly for us, quote, to divide what one has or receives into portions and give shares to others as well as to oneself. Some of you are familiar with previous versions of, quote, a committee on ministry. The Unitarian Universalist Association has outlined the tremendous variation in the structure, function, and membership of these committees, often with differing functions over time as congregations evolve. For example, my recent experience was to humbly serve as a liaison between a minister and our congregation as we parted ways. As we evolve and grow, I hope to join others to assist with provision of service to ourselves, our congregation, and the community at large, guided by the principles of our congregational mission and vision statements, and the efforts of our minister and the Board of Trustees. To this end, the committee plans to introduce ourselves to you and to survey the needs, wants, and wishes of the entire congregation. We will look forward to sharing with you, let it be a dance.
Lynn Stevens will continue and we'll talk a little bit about our mission and how it was developed and what it means for this committee and for the congregation in general.
In 2013, as a community, our congregation crafted new mission, vision, and covenant statements. Our mission became to inspire personal and spiritual growth, to connect in fellowship and service, and to act for peace and justice. Teams formed to lead us in developing and reaching specific goals for each aspect of the mission, and also to guide us in leading greener, more environmentally aware lives. With wide congregation involvement, we successfully reached our aspirations and continue to renew them. This Committee on Shared Ministry is a full circle experience for us all. As we join together to actively share in our ministry to one another, our community, and the wider world, we continue to broaden our goals and our outreach. We're asking ourselves again, what can we do? Where can we go from here? And how can we grow our Unitarian Universalist outreach? May we gently invite gratitude, simplicity, and harmony for all the beings we share lives with. Namaste.
And Nancy is going to share with us a little bit about our more concrete plans for the immediate future. Nancy?
Nope. Our mission, inspire personal and spiritual growth, connect in fellowship and service, act for peace and justice. It's a big mission at any time, but especially challenged by the limits we have in a pandemic. As we've talked about today, the idea of shared ministry makes us rethink the idea of ministry from what someone, the minister, does to what we all do with and for each other. It lets us consider ways to take some of our typical practices and see if we can COVID adapt them to continue to carry out our mission. Think about what happens at coffee hour. It's one of our most loved traditions. We get to talk with each other and catch up. We get to share good news or sometimes a worry. And like Lacey in our story, we listen to each other. It is in the spirit of coffee hour that we're planning some intentional conversations that will happen over the next few weeks. You'll get a call from someone in the congregation to connect. In addition to hearing how you are, we hope to gather some ideas of how we can get together in these coming months. While we're safe at home, sometimes we can feel stuck at home. If we feel isolated, winter will feel even longer than usual. Some ideas have surfaced so far, getting together to walk, maybe at Presque Isle or Asbury Woods, forming some small groups around common interests, watching a movie or reading a book, and then having a virtual discussion about it, maybe a knitting group or a cooking group. I like that one. There are probably some good ideas that we can come up with, so please start thinking. How can we be together and get together without getting together? You may have a need that could be lessened by the congregation or have something to share. We want to know and we want to help when we hope these conversations will help bring us together and connect with each other. Identify needs that anyone has, plan some fun ways to see each other in the coming months as we minister to each other. If you're open to initiating one or two of these calls, please put your name in the chat box. Just say calls. We'll add you to the list. We are having a little Zoom get together this afternoon at 2. We can send you an invite to that and we'll record it for anybody not able to join in or just explain over the phone if you call. Let's let's keep thinking about how we can interact in the coming months. We look forward to talking with each other, and feel free to have coffee and a snack during your chat.
So as Nancy said, we're having a little meeting at 2 p.m. today. Many of you are already involved in making the phone calls out to every member of this congregation. And if you haven't been involved yet and would be interested in being a part of that, we invite you, as we said, to please add yourself, and you can just write call in the chat and we'll add you to the list. And thank you so much. What a wonderful act of shared ministry. The Committee on Shared Ministry goes way beyond just evaluating the work of the professional minister, although that is part of it. The Committee on Shared Ministry assesses the overall health of the whole congregation and how well it's living into its vision and mission. So that's what we'll be doing, taking a look at how are we doing? How does the congregation think we're doing? And how do our programs and ministries align with what we say we want to do, which is to inspire, connect, and act. And we'll be continuing to have those conversations. And it's very important that all of us be open to listening to your feedback throughout the year, not just during this period where we're making phone calls. So anytime that you would like to share something with a member of the Committee on Shared Ministry or with me, please feel welcome and encouraged to do so. Now, just to kind of put this into a little bit of music and maybe get it into our bodies a little bit, I'd like to sing the hymn, Let It Be a Dance, which Jackson played earlier. I hope it got into your ears a little bit. It might be a less familiar one. And of course we have to stay muted, but know that our shared voices are going out there into the universe together, even though we can't hear each other right now. The words will be on your screen, and Jackson, I invite you to play the first two verses for us of Let It Be a Dance.
Do you want me to sing it too? I forgot. You want me to sing it or just play it?
You know, if you would not mind singing it just to give us something to follow, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Jackson.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words. Fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need to reap the harvest and plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance.
Thank you, Jackson, and thank you all. May it be a dance we do. And to finish off our dance and give it a nice happy bow, we have a little commissioning ritual for this new Committee on Shared Ministry. And there's a part for you all to play. The words will be up on the screen when the time comes. And I will cue you appropriately. Remember, it's an improvisation, so it doesn't have to be perfect. But if the members of the Committee on Shared Ministry would unmute themselves, and we will start the ritual of commissioning. Members of the newly created Committee on Shared Ministry, Mike, Lynn, and Nancy, what gifts do you bring to this sacred work of ongoing assessment advisement, and feedback.
We promise to listen.
Do you bring a willingness to serve and the trust that the congregation has placed in you and your abiding dedication to this beloved community?
We will.
Lynn, what other gifts do you bring?
We bring a focus on the health and well-being of this congregation, the effectiveness of its ministries, and the fulfillment of its mission to inspire, connect, and act.
And Nancy, what other gifts do these folks bring?
We bring an attitude and approach based in listening and a genuine desire to understand. We bring the knowledge that shared ministry means everyone's perspective is important.
Will you, as a body, dedicate yourselves to the whole of the congregation rather than representing any one faction or committee or group or side? Mike?
We will.
Lynn?
We will.
Nancy?
We will.
Every congregation, every minister, and every program needs regular assessment and guidance and honest feedback so that we can improve and more closely align with the most deepest held values of Unitarian Universalism. So will you gather and provide that feedback in a faithful and constructive and useful manner? Mike?
We will.
Lynn?
We will.
Nancy?
We will.
And now for members of the Board of Trustees who are here today. The Committee on Shared Ministry provides an important communication loop between you, the leadership, and the minister, and the congregation, who are its lay ministry. They complete a sacred circle of trust among all of us. So with that understanding, will you, the Board of Trustees, support and affirm the vital work of the Committee on Shared Ministry so they can do their job of assessing congregational health well and faithfully? If you do, please raise your hand and say, we do.
We do.
Thank you. Members of the congregation, this is your part, and a slide should appear very soon, I promise. Members of the congregation, your explicit mission is to inspire personal growth and spiritual growth, to connect in fellowship and service, and to act for peace and justice. So, will you support the work of the Committee on Shared Ministry, holding yourselves and your ministries accountable to the ideals and goals expressed in your mission? If so, please say, we will, and raise your hand.
We will. We will.
Wonderful. Now, as your minister, I also pledge to hold myself accountable to the congregation by engaging regularly with the Committee on Shared Ministry and listening to its feedback and its assessment of my own professional development and growth. And above all, I pledge to you to hold myself and my work accountable to the mission of this congregation and to our shared and sacred Unitarian Universalist values. Members on the Committee on Shared Ministry, you have demonstrated your fitness for this role. The congregation will now perform the act of commissioning in a community blessing. And the way we'll do this is we will say it muted, because I think it's just going to be a mess if we all try to say it together. So we will say it muted. You can say it along with me. And then if you agree, please raise your hand as a congregational member or friend. Here we go. Members of the Committee on Shared Ministry, we give you this commission with hope and faith in the future of this beloved community. We thank you for your willingness to serve. We bless your work going forward, and vow our ongoing support. May your work strengthen, enhance, and affirm the ministries of this congregation. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. And now, just to complete the circle, let's all hold hands. If you know how to do that, if you put your hands out on your screen so that your hands are connecting to the next person, let it be a dance. Beautiful. Thank you all so much, and thank you to the members of the Committee on Shared Ministry. Our closing words today, actually, I'm sorry. in the improvisation, I skipped a little bit ahead, and it's not time for closing words yet. It's time for joys and concerns. And it is the time when this community can share in the chat box a few words about how you're feeling. We ask that you not respond directly to others' entries, just be in the moment with how you are feeling, and we will bear witness to one another's states of being today. As Jackson plays Snowy Day. Thank you all for sharing what was on your hearts today. There were a lot of emotions shared. We saw lots of sadness at Doug's passing, and also at the loss of some other important people in the life of congregants. We saw frustration at canceled plans, joy at birthday milestones, worries about emergency surgery, and worries about the future. And we hold them all in the fullness of our hearts and in the fullness of this community. For these and for all the joys and sorrows and concerns that weren't shared, we breathe into this moment in reverence, in witness, and in love.
It is our work, shared with each other in covenant, that creates and sustains this beloved community. We extinguish this chalice, but its light lives on in the directions we have chosen today. The light of this faith lives on in us together, in our hearts, minds, bodies, and spirits. Amen, and blessed be.
And as Jackson plays the postlude, I want to thank you all for coming today, and thanks to all who volunteered to make some phone calls as part of this work of the Committee on Shared Ministry. I will put the link to today's meeting at 2 p.m. in the chat during the postlude, and then we'll all be breaking to go into breakout rooms afterwards. So thank you all for coming. Please enjoy the end of the service.
Okay, I was gonna do a different song, but I chose to do a kind of like a New Orleans thing, just a remembrance from the services we used to do with Doug and Pat and Tammy and some other members too for the New Year's service. So this one goes out to Doug. It's Tipatina. I'm just gonna do an instrumental version.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Jackson, for adding your tribute to Doug. It was beautiful. So if there are any announcements, I didn't see any in the chat except for some requests about the Zoom link for the meeting today. So I've posted it in the chat, and it can also be sent out by email. And we will do that immediately following the service.